Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about breakaway assets. The people of the G7, the developed world, work their adult lives to attain assets and a standard of living that will provide a future for their children to inherit. Yet before the population of G7 countries could utilize those resources, the bankers and asset managers in those areas agreed to move that money out and into a system that would benefit a small group of very wealthy people. There was a leveraged buyout of the planet. They gave up on the old system and created another one. They did not invest in that new breakaway system with their own money. They used your parents' money. They privatized legacy systems and used the assets to grow a new financial system. The global financial system created a tide that flowed away from assets for people expecting comfortable retirements into debt and liability. A top-down control grid reality cannot exist without artificial intelligence. Look at the people that were front row at the 2024 presidential inauguration. Those are the people that are needed to usher in the top-down control system technology and governance. But let's go back in time. In 1994, James Goldsmith, a British investment banker, was interviewed by Charlie Rose on his television show. He explained globalism in that interview. Goldsmith argued that the World Trade Organization would destroy Western culture. He said the World Trade Organization would drain the assets of the middle class and ruin American culture and destroy the quality of the food supply. All of the people in these financial institutions were not aware of this hidden agenda. In September of 1997, some people were actually working on ways to help middle-class people begin to earn more money and invest that money and improve their economic situations. When these plans were put forth to upper management, they were told that central banking groups had already given up on helping the middle class prosper. The central bank had already begun to steal pension funds and retirement assets to fund deep underground military bases and the second phase of the secret space program.
So what my brother is saying is that they're using people's retirement benefits to fund their next stage of development. So what they're doing is, okay, so if we go into space, they're investing that money, but they're not reaping any benefits. If we have to go underground, say it's nuclear radiation, sunspots, whatever, they're funding it with your retirement money. And you're not receiving a return on your investment. If you is, it's like 2%, which you could do better on your own. That's also the problem with a 401k. When they came up with a 401k, it's a tax code. And they used that tax code because they were looking for money to fund the stock market. So like, well, how do we do it? So, we'll come up with a 401k. So when I first heard 401k, I thought it meant $401,000. I'm like, okay, so no, I'm sorry, bruh. I know you're going to think I'm stupid. But I'm like, well, so that means when you're done investing, you get $400,000. Okay, cool. No, 401k is a tax code, and you don't even derive any benefit from it. If you take money out early, you're penalized. You take money out too late, you're penalized. But it's simply a tax code, and you're being taxed when your money comes out, even though you're being taxed when the money goes in. So that's what it was. It was a way to get private equity money and not realize, so the middle class would invest and not realize they're investing in the stock market. So you're doing the same situation with this, but it's to our detriment.
This is way worse. Essentially, there was a financial coup d'etat that began on October 1st, 1997, that shifted the American economy from an abundance of assets and few liabilities to fewer assets and an abundance of debt. A breakaway civilization needs globalization to generate the capital to fund a second space program. That transfer of money used private capital to start the second phase of the breakaway civilization. The first phase was started by the Nazis and the U.S. Navy. Right now, let's focus on the second phase because we've already talked about the first phase of the secret space program in our episode that's called Breakaway. Go back into the archives and look up the 7th Grade Mustache episode called Breakaway. So, what does the second phase of the secret space program look like on a financial level? In the developed world, there were more assets in municipalities at the community level. There was more money available to retirement funds. Then what happens is you shift debt and liability to those areas that once had a surplus of assets. And that money is moved to black budget programs as a way of saying that it is unaccounted for. This stealing of assets happens across the entire developed world. Wars and psyops are created to use shock and awe to take your attention away from the crime that has taken place. Tragedy and emotional fatigue taxes the human resolve, and you forget what the hell you were fighting for. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 to control monetary policy, printing money and the issuance of credit. Now, the same banking groups are attempting to control fiscal policy. Fiscal policy controls taxation. If they can have taxation without representation, then you will have the same situation that created the Boston Tea Party. People want to focus on racial inequality and tell you that is true inequality. That is the training wheels of inequality. Do not get fooled into focusing on that. Fifth dimensional chess inequality looks like this, like what we're talking about. Stealing the money that your parents worked to build a retirement for, and then taking that and putting into these black budget programs.
That's why we got away from pensions. You got to understand that back in the day, every job had a pension. And you would work a trade job, a decent wage, but it was more about the retirement and the pension. Now they did away with pensions and offer this 401k bullshit. Now there's still pensions out there, teachers, police officers, certain jobs, but what he's describing is how they stole the money for black ops. When they got away from pensions, that's when they started funding these. See, back in the day, everybody wanted to go to space. It was a big deal. I remember, 86, 84 when the space shuttle blew up, they could have given as much money as they wanted to NASA, and niggas and white folks and Mexicans didn't care. We were all rah-rah. Now they're like, well, shit, motherfuckers are starving. Why the fuck am I paying for a goddamn rocket? So sentiment changed. People's sentimentality changed towards that situation. When them teachers blew up, allegedly, things changed. Like, they're like, why are we spending money on this? It's not benefiting us. So they did away with pensions, which pensions are better, because you would pay into it and you got paid for the rest of your life. And you died and it went away, unless maybe you had a spouse. They might got some of it, but for the most part, that was a ideal retirement situation.
You have to understand what it is that you are up against. You're up against things like private endowments that rotate out chairmen and board members but continue for centuries.
Ford Foundation. There's another
Yale
Carnegie.
and Harvard.
Yeah, you heard that what they said about Harvard Medical School is all this big deal because it's funded by Big Pharma. They will not do any studies on vitamin D and vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. They will not. They're like, hey, people were asking, hey, will you do studies on this? They're like, nope, we can't. We're funded by Big Pharma.
Because they know that's also funded by the petrochemical industrial complex. But let's keep going.
Yes.
Surveillance technology is used on Americans to spy on them and create a controlled grip on every aspect of their lives. You have things like automated license plate readers that follow you through the city as you drive from one place to another. Facial recognition at grocery stores and airports. They're intimidating you to not opt out of facial scans right before you step into the TSA body search at the airport. Remember, before you hand them your driver's license at the airport, tell them you opt out of facial recognition. Things like laws used to detain, rendition, and prosecute terrorists are being used on American citizens. But let's talk about the beginning of black budgets. The National Security Act of 1947 and the CIA Act of 1949 allow the government to allocate money for government agencies and to then utilize it for secret projects. President Eisenhower authorized the creation of Area 51 and put the CIA in charge of security and financing. The drug runner Barry Seal would drop drug deliveries in Arkansas and then fly the money back to Area 51. He had Area 51 in his flight logs. He was giving the money from the drug sales to the CIA, who were waiting for him at Area 51. They were providing financing and security for black budget operations. So this drug game, which found its way into the black communities, was financing black budget, which has nothing to do with black people, black budget operations for the CIA. That right there is fucking crazy. Everybody's thinking about UFOs and all that bullshit at Area 51. So there was an executive order that was issued by Ronald Reagan in 1981, and it gave George Bush Sr., the vice president at the time, control of the National Security Council.
Former head of the CIA.
People always talk about how Putin was the head of the KGB.
Yes.
But George Bush was the head of the CIA. It's the same fucking thing. One of the parts of the executive order would allow him to use government money and black budget money to pay mercenaries.
Hey, something you said that was really deep. I think you kind of might not realize. You said Area 51. You said that drug dealer guy was dropping off money.
Barry Seal.
Barry Seal. We know the CIA is the biggest drug dealer in the world. So if you needed a black budget and it couldn't be approved, you would just sell drugs. So Area 51 probably was funded by drugs for years because you would never think about that. You're thinking about this is technology. You're thinking aliens. But how do they get the money? Drugs. You heard that guy when he I sent you this guy.
Skull and Bones is a pirate flag. These motherfuckers are pirates, dude.
How about, oh boy, he was a former CIA agent. He was in Afghanistan. He's over there, and he said when he went over there in I want to say the 60s, please forgive me. He said, I went over there in the 50s and 60s. They exported produce. They exported, vegetables and stuff, right? He comes back in the 90s, and he's like, there's nothing but poppy fields. Nothing but poppy fields. So he finds a farmer and asks him, why are we doing this? He said, why aren't you growing fruits and vegetables? He's like, no, this guy gave me permission. He said, no, not permission. He said, if I grow this, then I can, please forgive me.
They pay him to grow it.
Yes. He was being paid by some white guy to grow poppy. And he's like, so that's craziness because they were exporting fruits and vegetables. They could sustain themselves. Now they can't sustain themselves, but they need money from foreign countries. So that just shows you how big a drug dealer the CIA is, and the fact that they probably using drug money to fund Area 51, which you would never thought about. You would just think that it's a black budget part of defense, and they probably were selling drugs. we know about Bob Lazar. They had him arrested for pandering, and that guy, he's like, man, I worked on a program one time. But yeah, continue, my brother.
So as I was saying, George Bush was controlling the National Security Council. So that's all of the intelligence agencies. And that executive order allowed them to use government money and black budget money to pay mercenaries. That created a mechanism that has infinite global funding and allows them to pay selected corporations like Lockheed Martin that have access to beyond cutting edge technology. To me, that sounds like Cobra. A government has to have informational sovereignty and financial sovereignty. The U.S. government now has neither. 21 agencies and 5 military branches and intelligence agencies are feeding a bunch of data into 5 defense contractors that collect all that data and they send it to one database. So just think about that for a second. All this information is being funneled into one database. And this black budget money manifests in different ways. So that is the military industrial complex version of it. But there's a part of it that includes the FHA. The FHA was created in 1934 with the National Housing Act. So what they were doing is they were manipulating the housing program eventually to extract money out of that into black budget programs. And so the connection between the local institutions and the financial health of the area has been severed because it allows you to have government guarantee on everything. Now you can make money even as the neighborhood deteriorates. This strategy is used to commit mortgage fraud. By using drugs and mortgage fraud, whole communities can be leveraged. You can buy it cheap with its own money because you run the value down with drugs and mortgage fraud, and then you buy it cheap when everyone is desperate. That's a fucked up ass system, man. And we already know who they did that to. But there's another prong in its pitchfork. The missing money and where this missing money is going is what we're illustrating here. But we're going to talk about things like the Bank of International Settlements.
Hold on. Another thing, so you mentioned in 1913 when they created the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve is just a name. It is not a federal organization. It's not. It doesn't do anything.
Like FedEx.
It's just a name. And people, when you hear Federal Reserve, you assume that this was an arm of the government. But no, the Federal Reserve is just a bank that has a lot of pull. Like you said, Federal Express. It's not it's not a government agency. No, the U.S. Post Office is privately run, but still, that's the issue. So when you hear the name Federal Reserve, you give them some kind of sovereignty, or you think they're the government. No, they're not. So that's why it's really important for you to recognize that when my brother's telling you about these things, you must realize they're not government agencies, even though they have a official sounding name. That's like naming yourself Police Officer Bob, and then like, he's not a cop, he's a janitor. What the?
Or
fuck?
a Meta World Peace, and you're out there beating people's ass in the stadiums and shit. So, but check it out. So, the 1934 Securities Exchange Act has a rule called 10b-5 that basically says this 10b-5 rule is something that all security exchange workers on Wall Street know by heart. Rule 10b-5 translates to transparency with clients regarding investments that may have hidden dangers. For example, if you were given financial advice about a bond that is tied to a municipality, the financial advisor assisting in that transaction is obligated to tell you of anything that may affect any opportunity or any risks associated with that financial instrument. If that advisor is aware that black budget narcotic trafficking is about to destroy the municipality that you are investing in and doesn't tell you, that financial advisor is committing a crime. So another layer to this are PSYOPs. Here is something to consider. The areas that were flooded in the 2005 Hurricane Katrina flood were thousands of homes affected by mortgage fraud that was caused by this rebalanced debt-based economy.
What a coincidence.
Nobody ever talks about that, ever.
I thought it was 2008 because it was rampant.
It was 2005. I remember it clearly. I was getting off the interstate, my apartment was at the time, and I just heard about it on the news. It just happened that day. And I got off the interstate and I looked at the price of gas as I was coming to the traffic stop right there on the off-ramp. And gas was $5. Now back then, gas was like $1.50, $1.65.
What state were you in?
Georgia.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying for our listeners.
So in Georgia, in 2005, when this happened, gas was like $1.50. And I pulled on to the traffic light exiting the interstate, 285. And right there at the BP, those price gouging sons of bitches had jacked up the price of gas to $5. And that's when the government, George Bush Jr., issued a non-price gouging mandate where they couldn't do that. And then the next day, that shit was back to $1.50. It was crazy.
I remember having to drive down to Tennessee during that. And everybody was afraid we were going to run out of gas, and the gas stations wouldn't have gas and all that shit.
That's just fear. That's just fear-mongering.
Yeah, fear-mongering.
You have to destroy the receipts. When there is any type of financial wrongdoing, watch for some type of shock and awe or some type of disaster that is destroying any records or any proof of financial fuckery. The Oklahoma City bombing.
Yep, I was about to.
The World Trade Center, 9/11, and Pentagon attacks. Those three attacks had records of financial fraud by the government. The financial records that show the Arkansas drug money was laundered in the real estate in that area. Those records were destroyed in the Oklahoma City bombing. People don't know this shit.
That was called it was a Whitewater scandal with Bill Clinton and his old lady at the time, his wife. And they were, they ran a law firm. They were the governor of Arkansas, but it was some kind of it was called Whitewater, but it was a fraud, whole real estate scandal, excuse me. And so, look into that, check it out. But what he's telling you, whenever you have these big events, not just natural disasters, but these other events also, it's just a weird coincidence that there's records or something. Remember the whole big deal? Yeah, every 50 years, the Freedom of Information Act is lax, and they got to give out certain information. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And it's just a weird coincidence that every time there's a big, sometimes natural disaster, sometimes a flood, sometimes an earthquake, but The area that's affected is
Bill
someplace
Clinton
where,
was the president when the Oklahoma City bombing happened. It is
yep,
just a coincidence, wink wink, that
those
the
records
financial
were,
records that show money laundering in his state while he was the governor were destroyed in a bombing that was done by a patsy. Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas when MENA drug deliveries were being made by Barry Seal, who then dropped the money off to the CIA at Area 51. September 10th, 2001. Donald Rumsfeld had a press conference on TV. The day before 9/11, ladies and gentlemen, he had a press conference on TV. He mentioned trillions of dollars are missing.
yeah, oh yeah. They talked about that 21 trillion
Documents
or some
that
crazy,
reported security
number.
fraud were in Building 7 on 9/11 and the Pentagon on 9/11. The Patriot Act was used to transfer massive amounts of money to black budget programs, i.e., deep underground military bases and the secret space program. When Donald Rumsfeld gave that speech, September 10th, 2001, the day before September 11th, he was talking about the missing money going to the Central Bank and the Bank of International Settlements. Now let's talk about the Bank of International Settlements. The Bank of International Settlements, located in Basel, Switzerland, it has 63 of the most powerful central banks in the world. The New York Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve are shareholders. They became shareholders in 1994, the same time this asset heist began to happen. The Bank of International Settlements has sovereign immunity. It has its own police force and cannot be prosecuted by anybody. Nobody has the authority to prosecute them. They are the breakaway civilization people. The BIS can move money on its own balance sheet secretly. It reports to no authority. It stole 21 trillion right before September 11th, 2001. This is what Rumsfeld was talking about, but he couldn't say exactly. The Bank of International Settlements was created after World War I to manage the reparations going toward the German government. The Bank of England and the European central banks wanted sovereign immunity. They wanted a way to do their dirt and to answer to nobody. But to learn more about the history of the Bank of International Settlements, read the book The Tower of Basel, The Shadowy History of the Bank That Runs the World by Adam Labor. Now, between 1998 and 2015, there were 21 trillion of undocumented transfers toward 170 underground bases worldwide. There is a transportation system that connects them together. Some of these bases have been documented as being part of the national security system. Some of these underground bases were built for catastrophe and continuity of government. Now, I'm going to stop here for a second to highlight something that people may have experience with. There are people around the Appalachian areas, there's people around the western states near the mountains that would talk about how they would hear these large booms. These booms that sound like they're coming from within the earth. Those are explosions or cavities of airs that are opening up when these drilling machines are moving into these areas, or they're blowing holes through solid granite to start the drilling process, because they're creating these transportation pathways to connect these underground bases. There's a guy named Richard Sauter. He's done extensive research into underground bases. You can look him up. There's also a show called Top Secret America, came out around 2012, and two reporters were discussing the underground facilities that were created with the creation of around the time of the Patriot Act. So think about this. Let's put things into perspective. People talk about China, and China is a threat, and the internet is information. and communication. The Chinese do not own any of the undersea cables that connect North America to Europe, to Africa, to Asia. Many of you may not even know, but there are cables, actual cables, that connect these continents together. That's how the internet works. The backbone of the internet is not satellites. The backbone of the internet is actually cable. It's cable that is under the sea, and it goes along the ocean floor. Whoever controls the ocean and space controls the internet and communication. The undersea cables that transmit internet and space, that is the realm of communication satellites.
Hey, you were talking about the underground like communication.
Underwater.
You remember underwater? Excuse me, underwater. You remember when we had that big beef with South Korea and oh boy, that movie that came out where they were making fun of him. Yep, they were making fun of him, and then he threatened North America. Remember what remember what Brock did? Turn that internet off for like 2 days.
Turn that bullshit off.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's the craziest part. See, that's strategy. Everybody else, hey, we got weapons of mass destruction. He like, I turned the internet off. Y'all niggas can't even communicate. You can't watch porn. You can't do shit. But that shows there's other ways to fuck with people though. Like we didn't fuck with their food. We didn't fuck with, but yeah. So
think about this: you go to Mars, and Elon Musk starts acting the fuck up, and he can just turn shit off whenever he wants.
You can turn them cars off too. More and more people are getting out of the Teslas, not because, well, there's other issues, but more and more people are finding out, like, hey, if you don't make a payment, that car can return to the dealership. What you gonna do? More and more people also are realizing how not smart he is. He doesn't have a real doctorate. Hey, do you know his degree is economics and finance, just like mine? No, seriously, look it up. He had an honorary doctorate. That's the same shit we had with Bill Cosby, where Temple gave him an honorary doctorate. An honorary doctorate is something somebody gave you. It's not like you earned it. And so this guy,
he's a construct.
Here's what I'm trying to get across to everybody. People admire him because he's a billionaire, not because he's innovative. And a lot of the stuff he does is because he is autistic. And when I say that, people think I'm making fun of him. I'm like, no, he doesn't have that connection to
but he hasn't created anything.
No. He bought Twitter for $14 billion. He bought Tesla from Chad and the other dude. And again, he got the girth of his money came from his inheritance, but also from the PayPal mafia. We talked about it past podcasts. But what I'm trying to get across to people, be careful admiring people because of money. Because money and success ain't always the same thing. He's not that successful, but he does know how to market certain things. And I think also, Trump is backing away from him. I think once it got out that this motherfucker wasn't the genius everybody thought he was, he's like, you're not. I don't have a real doctorate, and your kid is bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, so. But go ahead. We're pointing out that there's other ways to fuck with people, and if we went to Mars and this motherfucker's the one who's in charge, he throws tantrums. He's not as bad as Bill Gates, but he'll throw a tantrum and fuck around and shut your oxygen off, and y'all motherfuckers will be fucked up.
But what people should really be aware of and paying attention to is the fact that when there's wars happening, they're fighting for resources.
They're
fighting for resources. The whole dust up over Taiwan is not because they want to save those people. It's because TSMC. It's the chip manufacturer.
It's superconductor manufacturer.
They don't want mainland China to control the supply of the chips, because data is the new oil, and you need all these chips to run the AI system that's going to control the top-down control system. See, this is the problem. Everybody out here fucking around with AI.
For no reason, but go ahead. You're right.
They are basically like a child that's found their father's gun and is playing around with a weapon.
Look, let's talk about movies. I hate using movies as an example. When you watch Star Wars, you see C3PO, R2D2. That's how AI should be. AI should be helping you do the job. I watched a scene from this latest one, Andor. You know I hate it. So, but the scene is a thick black girl working on one of
I
the
saw it.
TIE fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the scene. And I'm like, God damn, she got some cakes on her. And then, but then she does her thing with the tablet, works on it, and then this little robot walks over. She sets it there, and he starts working too. That's how AI should be. It should not replace you. It should make you better and more efficient. But that's the problem is you got so many people are lazy and want convenience, and they're like, AI makes my life easier. It's not about, but then they let AI do their job. When you walk in Walmart and you try to get a key cut, and the motherfucker tells me, hey, you know there's a machine at the front of the store. I say, yeah, but if I go to the machine at the front of the store, you don't have a job anymore. You know, you're literally
I have the same problem when I go to a hardware store.
Still,
and they're all like, you know, there's a machine. Yeah, but what you're not paying attention to is your ass ain't gonna have a job if you don't make these fucking keys.
you see it all. Like, you ever see a white guy introduce his girl to a guy with a bigger dick? Hey, what'd you meet Leroy? You don't do that. You don't introduce her to your replacement. Well, that's what these people are doing. They're introducing people to their replacement. And then what's going to happen is there's not enough jobs in the middle class. Now, I seen a couple black girls online today, and I was surprised because these girls were like, hey, y'all been dissing Trump, but you see Trump wants to lower the work week to 38 hours, 4 hours, 32 hours, excuse me.
That is leading to UBI.
Well, hold it. Me and you talked about this years ago. If you wanted to fix the country, what I would do is make a shorter work week, make a higher minimum wage, because what you're doing is you're literally creating more jobs. But here's the problem with what Trump's doing. He hasn't created the offices, the buildings, and the factories yet. So you need to be making sure those factories exist. You need to be making sure that these jobs exist. If you want these people to do the jobs, then you boost the economy and the shit works. Now, what you're talking about is true also, where like if you don't be careful, we're gonna fuck around and end up in the same spot. The reason people voted for Trump because they saw this bullshit with these goddamn fucking Democrats. And this also, I saw somebody break down the social score even more. This dude broke it down. He said that your social score is actually your threat level upside down.
Okay, so in the early episodes of this show, I referred to something called the relevancy index.
Yes, the island of relevance.
The relevancy index is just another name for this thing that they want to create. And so, what Elon Musk said he wants to create the American version of WeChat. There's a social credit score attached to WeChat. There's a social credit score attached to everything in China. That is a top-down control system society, and he wants to implement that in America. And everybody thinks just because he does this, one for you, two for me, Doge found all this missing money, that everything that he does is dipped in gold.
Worthwhile. No, it's not. Look, people are good and bad. Just because, so how about this?
Dude, I was working with this guy, Israeli guy, that works in IT at a high level. And he's like, Elon Musk is dangerous. And this motherfucker is an Israeli dude, like a Israeli dude. You know, they're like in his house, like they speak straight up, Hebrew.
He's worse than us. Shit, look. But that's some deep shit, though. If he scares him, then fuck it. We're in trouble.
But that's what I'm saying. Everybody, they can't see how these separate things that look like they're separate things are all part of this control mechanism that's coming together. And they don't realize it, but what's happening, what's coming online is the fucking Death Star. The Death Star is being built around you, not in orbit. You're going to wake up one morning and you live in the Death Star. Okay, today is May the 4th. May the 4th be with all of you. So, here's the thing though. Let's jog your Star Wars memory for a second. Go back through all the movies where they're inside the Death Star and it's Darth Vader walking through the halls and everybody is wearing these dark gray colors, and they're all pale because they ain't getting no fucking sunlight, and everybody's depressed because they're oppressed. And it's this draconian, utilitarian, totalitarian government. Okay? And everybody has to keep their head down and do their job. That is life inside the Death Star. They are trying to make life around here like that. Okay, what you don't realize, what people don't realize, is that black people have lived in the Death Star for a long time, for centuries.
We rose up a couple times.
So, but for a young black man to drive around the streets and look in his rear view every 30 seconds, you're looking for the Death Star, the shock troops. You're looking for not the regular stormtroopers. You're looking for the stormtroopers in all black that Luke Skywalker destroyed in Mandalorian Season 2's season finale. That's what you're looking for. Those are the police. And I want to say something real quick. The whole George Floyd thing, whether it's real or not, whether it's a psyop or not, it actually did a lot of good because it caused the fucking police to ease the fuck up. And I do not feel sorry for those motherfuckers at all.
How many of these motherfuckers got arrested because of that shit? Because they was not arresting the motherfuckers over accidental deaths. But, hold it. Something you just said, I need to elaborate on your Star Wars lore. Let's go to the prequels a little bit.
That's what I'm talking about, okay?
No. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm talking, if you want to do a correlation, how about Palpatine and motherfucking Elon Musk? You remember the Senate gave Palpatine temporary power. That was supposed to be temporary, and when he got power, he never gave it back. This is the shit we're worried about. Elon's supposed to get his power back.
That's a good analogy.
He's supposed to be fixing shit temporarily, but the next thing you know, you're going to look up, he's still there. Now, everybody keeps talking about Trump is going to go for another third term. Yeah.
They say that shit with Bush.
Yeah.
The white people said that shit about Obama.
Yeah. So, if I was worried about Trump doing that, I'd be worried about World War III, because if he started World War III, then when it's time for election, he wouldn't step down. He would stay. That's when that's the shit you got to worry about. If we had a real situation, then he might not step down. Then I would worry about the shit then. But the one you need to watch out is Elon, because like I told you, that power to fix this economy is supposed to be temporary. Second, when he was talking about the Social Security system and how fucked up it was, and that we have people that are 130 years old still getting checked. What he's really trying to say is, hey, the system still counts a certain way, yada, 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 but he's not a good communicator. He's not used to talking to people, not people that are his equal. He's used to talking to subordinates, and where they got to figure out what the fuck this nigga's saying. But when Trump sat there and let him talk, Trump's like, this motherfucker's an idiot. So you got to watch that shit. But that Emperor Palpatine, remember, the Senate granted him temporary power, and next you know, he kept the shit. And that's what made him the emperor, is that, hey, y'all motherfuckers want to give me power? Shit. I'll give it back once I fix the problem. Either the problem don't get fixed or I don't give it back. Either way, you stuck with me now.
What's really strange about the secret space program is there's an overlap between this shadow government and reality and headlines sometimes. So there was a executive order that Barack Obama had passed before he left office, and it was related to space and slavery. And it said that no company, no government, no person can enslave anybody on a asteroid or space colony of Earth. I'm thinking, that's really strange. That's very specific, and it's very strange considering if you go by our paradigm that we haven't colonized any other place other than Earth. So why would he create this unless there's something that he's aware of? Here's another strange little thing that he did after he got out of office. He said, read the book, The Three-Body Problem. And he said, it's almost like a wink because he's saying this book relates to some of the things that I had to deal with. He said, read The Three-Body Problem. He said, you'll find this interesting and useful. In The Three-Body Problem, it's a Chinese science fiction novel, which became a TV show, about a alien civilization that comes to Earth and causes catastrophes and floods, basically terrorism from space, and then dominates humanity and calls, humanity a bunch of bugs. So Obama could have used that as an analogy for the secret government and the way they view humanity. But now I want to take this time to turn this around, because what we do is we present the problem and then we teach you how to deal with the problem. Because we're not trapped in here with them. Those motherfuckers are trapped in here with us. The problem is that many of these people who talk about these things do not talk about the spiritual component of all this. You have to remember that you are a child of God. You have to know that. You will eventually know that. You are. They are trapped in here with us. And all these people, the uber wealthy, when you hear their thoughts and the way they think, they're not happy people. They don't talk about being joyful and having life filled with purpose. They're all really miserable because they have no spiritual component to their lives. We're in here talking about the secret space program and how the money is basically sucked out of these retirement funds so that the people who worked their entire life basically had the rug pulled off one of them. They basically pulled a Charlie Brown where she just pulled the football from, moved it away, and he tried to kick the football. There's a Dutch newspaper that ran a story on August 29, 2014 about the Dutch National Court of Auditors discovered billions of dollars missing from NATO. So this is a planetary worldwide thing. Like I said, it's the G7, the developed world. And they were finding a way to get this started in 1994. And by the time the October, beginning of fiscal year of 1998, October of 1997, which is the beginning of the fiscal year of 1998, they had already decided to give up on people. They gave up on the common man, the middle class of the developed world. And these people only want war and psyops. So how do you fight against this? See, really, peace makes more money. In a world where there is more transparency, shame and shunning works in society, because that's exposing. This is what we do here. We shame and expose and shun the people who are doing wrong against the common man. There's another book you can read about this, about the original secret space program. It's called Blowback, written by Christopher Simpson. And it describes Nazi money being moved back into the Exchange Stabilization Fund in the 1940s, after World War II.
I want to talk about some cryptocurrency stuff. So first things first.
Okay, blockchain.
Chain. Yes.
Control.
Because we've talked about this in past podcasts, how this shit ain't as foolproof as they make it seem. First things first, I want to preface this by saying this is not financial advice. I got to cover my ass because I don't want our podcast fucked over, because this means there's a lot of...
Which is crazy because you're not an exchange worker. You don't work on Wall Street. You're not a trader. Somebody who trades.
Nope.
But whatever.
So one of the things with Ripple is there's a couple of big issues. One, the lawsuit is supposed to be ending by the SEC, but let's talk about Ripple specifically. So there's two ledgers. My brother was just talking about blockchain and the ledger. So the ledger is supposed to be everybody's supposed to be able to see it. Well, if you pay attention, Ripple has two ledgers, a private ledger. So the private ledger is for private funding from banks and stuff like that. So a lot of banks are buying up Ripple right now. They expect the cost of Ripple to go up to, thousands of dollars. So that's kind of shady. So you mean to tell me I thought this was supposed to be transparent? That's the whole beauty of this thing. So the big issue with that is that, so let's go back to the SEC hearing. So this hearing is supposed to be resolved about a month ago. It's supposed to be over, but here's what Ripple did that's kind of genius, but it's it's a little bit shady. So Trump was talking about purchasing a crypto reserve, and he's talking about Bitcoin. He named Ripple some other stuff. But the government never planned on buying Ripple. But at the same time, if you pay attention, the government didn't buy the Bitcoin. It confiscated that Bitcoin for people doing illegal activities. So what Ripple said was, the lawsuit's over, but we'll pay the fine anyway. They're like, why would you pay a fine? We said you didn't do anything wrong. We said, we want to pay the fine, but we want to pay the fine in Ripple. By them paying the fine in Ripple, they're going to give the government Ripple. So the same way that the government got their Bitcoin is the same way they're going to get Ripple. And by doing that, they're going to give the government a shitload of Ripple to pay this fine that they didn't have to pay. And now the government's going to do it. It's going to boost Ripple because the government has Ripple, and they're going to try to make sure that shit goes up. Little shit like that, and the fact that, like I said, they have dual ledgers. The fix is still in, but again, that's not financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy it or not. I'm just letting you know that all the things they tell you are supposed to be better and more safe, and it's complete bullshit still. Also, be careful about your crypto wallet because your wallet. So they found some code in your Ripple where they're trying to get your keys to your wallet. So be careful about putting Ripple in your wallet right now. I wouldn't put it on your wallet. I might leave it at exchange where the whole point is you don't trust the exchange. But right now, they found some code on some of these Ripple transactions where it allows them to get the keys for your wallet. So I just want to give that heads up. I don't want us broke. If you're broke and you're beholden to somebody, that's how we get in these situations where
we started talking this show about how there was a huge transfer of wealth from assets to debt. The problem right now is that people are getting too used to having debt.
When we were kids, debt was for emergencies. It wasn't for day-to-day use. Motherfuckers are using debt just to survive. Now, if you're
why you should use cash more.
Yes, but hold it. If you're talking about your business, most of these businesses are supposed to survive off debt. That's a whole other thing. But as a human being, as a child of God, no, I shouldn't be in debt all the damn time. That is a way for people to fuck you over. That's a way for people to manipulate your behavior. That's a way for people to get over on you or make you do things. Or, hey, you owe me $100,000. You better slap this woman and do this, that, and other. That kind of shit. So that's what we're trying to get away from. You are an entity. You're a child of God first. The reason my brother brought it up is because you answer to a higher power, not just these banks. And that's what you got to recognize. If you don't recognize it, you'll be manipulated and you'll be abused.
So throughout history, city walls were made as protection from the enemy. They were usually massive structures enhanced with guard towers. Some were built on hills, making invasions more difficult, while others were in the front near oceans and seas to protect the towns from invaders and ships, or in some cases pirates. Castles and walled cities are surrounded by moats and drawbridges. The drawbridge crosses the moat and connects to the road that was drawn up and basically closing off the castle from invaders. This same logic can be applied by people detecting bullshit or harm approaching. I bring this up because here we are telling you about how they have already stolen this money, and they have already given up on the middle class. They are not offering any help. There is no backup coming. There is no rescue coming. Nobody is coming to save you. We are behind enemy lines. Yes, they're trapped in here with us, but we still got to deal with them. And so you have to protect yourself. You have to bring your drawbridge up and close yourself off from the bullshit. You know, there's a word that looks like entertainment, but it's called entrainment. Entrainment is the use of suggestive programming. Suggestive programming and MK Ultra technology within entertainment. Now, the both of us, we watch and consume entertainment. But it's important that you limit the amount of entertainment that you consume and your screen time.
This is important for the basic fact that sometimes, you lose track of your own thoughts fucking with somebody else's. The example I'll give, I remember they were interviewing DMX one time. They were asking him about other rappers, asking about Tupac. He's like, I don't listen to nobody else. And I'm like, that's an arrogant nigga. No. Sometimes you need to be with your own thoughts. And I think sometimes we're scared of our own thoughts. That's why we surround ourselves or we bury ourselves in other people's works and things like that. I told this chick one time that she's very intelligent, but she's not smart. And she's like, what does that mean? I said, well, you can recite what somebody else wrote, but you can't come up with your own ideas, or you can't put that into reality. What makes us divine is bringing something into this world, and you can't bring shit into this world. All you can do is recite somebody else's regurgitate somebody else's bullshit.
So, but here's the thing, though. You want to take this information that we presented today regarding debt and assets, and how there's more debt than assets now that are available to the common people. That does not mean that you cannot generate a comfortable living still for yourself and your family. What it requires now is more creativity, because the world that we're moving towards is this top-down control system. You can still, on a day-to-day basis, face-to-face basis, network with people and trade your goods and services for other goods and services.
Hey, the creativity, you have to create. You can't just talk about it or come up with an idea and think about it and sit on it. I've done it myself, but don't do that.
Here's an idea. Start sitting with your back to the TV. Just try this every now and then. Walk into the room with the TV on and sit down with your back to the TV and do your best to concentrate on independent thought. Do your best to work out problems that you have. You're going to find yourself turning the volume of the TV down so you can focus more on your internal dialogue.
Hey, you ever prayed to solve a problem? But I don't pray for, fix this, Lord. I pray, give me insight. I'm not the only person to walk the face of the earth that has encountered this problem. Give me insight, Lord. Grant me wisdom, shine your light on me. And I've solved stuff that I did not know how to do. I've built things I did not know how to build, but I know it was a situation with my kids where something had to be fixed immediately. So you need to ask for guidance. Don't ask for you to fix my problem. Make me your tool. Make me your weapon, and I can do anything in Lord's name. In Jesus' name. Blah blah blah. Go on. So solve problems on your own.
So, but also that means everything we've talked about today is telling you there will be more psyops. There will be more shock and awe. See, modern people perceive magic as mental exercises and visualization. Real magic works on specific formulas that rely on angels, spirits, demons, and then calling those entities and binding them to make them work for you. When disasters happen, you must have the resources to feed your family. You have to call on your resources, and make them work for you. That's your magic. So when disasters happen, you must have the resources to feed and shelter your family. I'm like, why is this guy talking about magic? Because you're calling on something that you have to use your power. Your power in this world is your creativity and the assets you have to draw from. That's your magic. Draw from your creativity. Because, see, okay, A few minutes ago, I told you to sit down with your back to the TV while it's on and do your best to create something. You can scribble something, you can write a rhyme, you can make something visually, but do something once a day where you are using your creativity. And it is a muscle that you will fine tune and tone. Be creative once a day. This is the thing. I'm going to issue a challenge to everybody listening to this, and I want you to be creative for 5 minutes every day. It doesn't matter how you're creative, but be creative. Create something every day. It can be something really small, the size of a quarter or a nickel, but make something every day. Because what starts to happen is these neurons in your brain, these neural pathways in your brain will get energy flowing through them because they get weak because you're not sending the electricity through those neurons. And so therefore, you want to send energy through all these different parts of your being to keep those corridors of energy open.
Keep moving. Keep the energy flowing through them.
Exactly. This is the challenge, though, because we're talking about how you're going to use your assets and your creativity together. Because we're in a time where we have learned that they have stolen, and nobody is going to punish these motherfuckers. They will punish you, right, for like the smallest shit. But that's all the control system, top-down society they want to create. They want you snitching on everybody. They come out with the Patriot Act to get you to snitch on your neighbor and create a surveillance state. You do not have globalism without a surveillance state. You don't have a breakaway civilization without globalism. You see what's happening here? These are all different layers that are part of a larger whole. And these things create this entire prison planet they want to create, right? But if you are trapped in a room with an evil person, are you going to let their evil overcome you? Fuck no. You won't. You can't. There is no option.
They don't have the authority.
They don't have the authority. Say that again.
We give away our authority. And the Patriot Act was the first step in that shit. You know, I never thought America would look like that. You know what I'm saying? But
and you still got people taking their shoes off at the airport.
When we were kids, do you remember going to the airport and watching planes just come in?
All the way.
Go all the way to the gate. Go all the way to the gate. And you watch planes come in, and your dad would take you up there, and that was like a trip to Disneyland for us, nigga. Shit. Mm-hmm. But now, shit, you're only getting back here if you bought a ticket.
But that's by design. They want you to think with guilt and shame. So they're using the shame on you, but the shame is on them. But that's the whole thing. You have to, when people come at you and say they don't take cash, make them take cash.
That's all I got. I ain't got my card on me. This machine doesn't take credit card. Which machine takes cash? Like, that is rebellion. I don't know if I want to use rebellion, but you got to rebel against the system. You got to push back. That's all we're saying. Push back. And I think we forget to push back because, well, I want to eat. Life ain't meant to be easy. So stop with, I want convenience will get you fucked up. So I'm just warning you right now. Pay attention and, take care of yourself. When I say take care of yourself, learn how to do stuff on your own. Don't be afraid to walk to the front of the store and, hey, I need help back here. Well, there's a machine up front. Yeah, I don't want a machine. I want a person. I want a pulse. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, and that's another thing is like, you can get so entrained into going to self-checkout. Listen, I'm sure you may think the person that's doing the checkout is a shithead. I dealt with a shithead person a few days ago. Recently. And I had, all I did was gave them a simple math problem and they short-circuited.
Look, we need to do the episode. See,
we will. We're not going to talk about it now.
No. I wasn't saying that. I'm saying we need to do an episode on toxic femininity. See,
okay. But stay on point. Here the thing is, right now, we need everybody to use their creativity and find ways to make money that's around you. Find ways to create Not just make money, y'all.
Value,
Businesses.
great value. Yeah.
Businesses. Find ways to make businesses around you and run them. Don't just do it 2 and 3 times. No, get good at it. Get effective at it. Because that is the only way that you will find a way forward to freedom. Because if you're working these gig jobs or you're, this perpetual student, you're on a fast track to UBI. You got 2, master's degrees and you don't know jack shit about life. And all you got is opinions about stuff that you've never lived and no lived experience.
You never did.
You're on a fast track to UBI.
But that's also what I meant by you're intelligent, but you're not smart. You can recite some shit in the book, but well, how do we apply that to ourselves? How do we build with? Nope. That means that's worthless. If you can't use that information, it's worthless.
They have stolen your parents' retirement money, and they used it to create deep underground military bases and bunkers for their breakaway civilizations and their secret space program. Okay? But we still gonna be here, and we gotta make the best of this life. We gotta live our best life. And we gotta be creative, and that's the only way we're gonna prosper. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.